December session of the Androscoggin Historical Society. The mission of the society is to discover, preserve, and disseminate information about Androscoggin County. And my name is John Henderson, and I'll be your host this evening. In the course of this evening's proceedings, if you haven't signed in yet, there is a sign-in sheet in the back, and before you leave, I would appreciate you just letting us know you were here. And if at any point in the evening you need to use the restroom, there is one in the back. As you go down the hallway, go in the room on the left, and it's the closet in the back. Okay. And I do not much exaggerate. At the conclusion of this evening's program, we will have refreshments out in the stairwell on the other side of the stairs. There's a table set up with cookies and drinks and whatnot. I've sampled them, and they're good. And this evening, we're honored to have Donna Berry come and speak with us. Donna is a native of Long Island, New York, and a graduate of the State University of New York at Oswego and the Teachers College at Columbia. Her teaching career spanned 28 years in public school and as a museum educator, how appropriate for tonight. And Donna and her husband retired to Maine in 1996. And as a member of the West Auburn School Historical Society, Donna recently co-authored a book on the history of North and West Auburn. She plays the part of the schoolmarm at the West Auburn One-Room Schoolhouse, where she recreates an 1850s school day for visiting school classes. And teachers may call her at 346-3106 to book a visit. And so this evening, please welcome warmly Donna Berry.
If you're tired of seeing me in the newspaper, I'm also tired. I have to keep reminding myself that fame is fleeting. We all have our one moment in the, in the sun, and none of that was solicited. It all just happened to happen. Before I start, though, I would like to just comment on a few things that are here in the front in case I forget. The book that was just mentioned on the history of North and West Auburn was authored by several people from the West Auburn School Historical Society. George Bucher's here tonight, and myself. And is there anyone else here that worked on this? I don't think so. But the book is $20, and we did bring a few. One has already been purchased. That makes me happy. And so if you're interested in that, there are a few brochures talking about the program that I do at the school. If you're a teacher or know someone who is a teacher who you think might be interested, please take one. And as I'm speaking, I didn't think it would be appropriate to pass all these pictures around, but these are pictures showing the metamorphosis of the school, the West Auburn School, from a wreck that was about to be torn down to its present glory. So after I finish speaking, if you'd like to come up and take a look at those, Beverly Spofford made a nice picture display of the different stages of that process. Tonight we're going to step back in time to a time when an apple was usually in your lunchbox, when blackboards were really boards painted black. We do have those at the school. When Bible reading was required and reciting the Lord's Prayer was part of each school day, and teachers were permitted to use corporal punishment. My interest in one-room school education probably began when I attended one myself in grades 1 and 2 in New York. I always thought it would be fun to teach in one, and that opportunity did present itself in 1996. I had just moved to Maine and saw the West Auburn one-room school resting quietly on the corner of Boothby Street and the West Auburn Road, and I attended a meeting of the West Auburn Historical Society and learned about the history of the school. If you read the article in the Sun Journal this morning about my work there is one error in that article, and it will be corrected in the paper, but just in case. It infers that the school is part of the Androscoggin Historical Society, this organization, but in actuality, there is a historical society, the West Auburn School Historical Society, that takes care of that property. So I attended a meeting of the Historical Society and learned something about the history of the school. The property which the school rests upon was deeded to the city of Auburn by Zibian Crafts for the sum of $40, with the understanding that that property would be used for purpose of education. And it is a beautiful spot. The school sets back from the road, and if you've ever been up to the Norlands, you may notice that that school is right on the road. And many of them were placed on the worst piece of property in the town. The property that could not be farmed, the property that was not wanted by anyone. And so we are really lucky there because we are set back. We have a nice big area right in the front and a nice area on the side where children can play. The deed was dated 1858, and we know that building was in use from 1843 until 1950, a total of 107 years. So in our research, we found that the building was located on the Dr. James property, which was a little bit down the West Auburn Road, and was brought up the road on a sled pulled by several yoke of oxen and put on that piece of property. So the children who left that building in 1950 moved to the C.P. White School, which is this four-room school in North Auburn, and that building was in use until 1989 when it closed, and then the Auburn Land Lab used that building until 2009, and now the building is in private hands. So in 1950, when that building closed, it began to fall apart, as all buildings do when they are not being used. Windows got broken. Every window in the building was broken. And the roof leaked and animals came in to make their nests. So finally the Auburn School Department decided that the best thing to do would be to raise the building and sell off the property. Well, the people that live around that school rose up in horror. And the alumni and the people that lived around the school banded together, and that's when the Historical Society was formed. And with much donated labor and materials and time, sweat equity as we call it, they were able to raise enough money and put the building back to the way it looked previously. And it would take me all evening to name all the names of people that worked on that project, but just as one, because most of us in Auburn know the name Aretzian. David Aretzian was principal of the Franklin Alternative High School at the time, and he volunteered his students to come and work on the property, and they did a lot of the cleaning inside and recycled a lot of the things they found, enough of recycling to raise $110 for the project. So we are blessed to have this historic site in our midst and give thanks for that, for the foresight of those people that made it possible. In 1992, there was a ribbon cutting ceremony, and when you do the math, that means we are 20 years old this year. In the beginning, June Spear actually, and a number of the people at the Historical Society got together and started to research that particular building. And she discovered that it was very hard to find any information about one particular school. The rural schools were kind of lumped together in the school reports. So she, through hard labor and research, came up with a book which she named Down Memory Lane, which gives a brief history, as best as she could discover, of this one particular school. And then she decided that what was really going to be helpful is if we could get in touch with people who had actually attended the school and people who had taught at the school and listened to their stories. And that would be the most helpful thing. So in 2000, we applied for a $1,000 New Century Community History grant from the Maine Humanities Council, and which facilitated the recording of oral histories of people that had attended or taught between 1925 and 1950, which was a span of 25 years. So we got some very interesting stories about the actual life at that school. Now, I've chosen to recreate an 1850s school day there because that gives the children a very different experience from what they're used to in their own school. And the purpose is to be able to go back and make comparisons. So I'm just going to tell you sort of briefly what we do there in this program, and by doing that we will touch base on some of the interesting things about education in 1850. And I know just from listening that a lot of you have stories, and that will come right at the end, so just bear with me. The West Auburn School has only one door, one entrance, and if you ever go by the old schools, you'll notice there were two in many of them. One for boys to come in and one for girls. So when I have the children enter, they come girls first, and then boys follow. And that, of course, is very different, because when they line up boys and girls separate, and nobody does that today. You don't say boys line, girls line. Everybody just lines up. So that's very different, right from the get-go. And when the children enter, they stand by their desks, and then they make their manners. And making your manners means that girls curtsy and boys bow to the teacher, and then they're seated. Now, the schoolroom has both the slate boards and the blackboards, real boards painted black, which is certainly different from the green boards and the white boards that kids have in school today. In fact, a lot of them probably don't even write with chalk in their schools anymore, so this is different. Originally, the building had windows on both sides. When they renovated the building, they found the actual marks of where the windows were on the one side, but after electricity came around, they were able to close those windows. They didn't need the natural light. And then it made room for the blackboards. So we have windows on one side, and they brought the outhouse inside. So when he said there was a closet for the bathroom here, that's exactly what we had, a closet. And maybe that's where they got the idea of water closet. It is an indoor outhouse. It's not a flush. So, of course, sometimes I think we should have a field trip to the bathroom because everybody has to check out the bathroom. At this particular school, a neighbor would bring in pails of water and for drinking, and children are very surprised that everyone drank out of the same dipper. And we talk about how today that would be unheard of. A wood-burning stove provides our heat. And there is a rather humorous anecdote about a Mrs. Ford who was the janitress in the 1930s. And when she came to start the fire in the morning, she would throw open all the windows in the middle of the winter. And she said, you cannot heat stale air. So she had to freshen the air in the room before she could actually warm it up. Now, it's interesting to the children to hear what it was like to be a teacher in those times. Recently, I read that in this country today, 3 out of 4 teachers are women. And when you read the reports, the old reports, it is very clear that nothing has changed because most of the teachers were women. And when I think about career choices that I had, I mean, the article said today I'm 76, so now it's public knowledge. But she said, what were our choices? You could be a secretary, a nurse, or a teacher, or you could get married and have children. So teachers could not be married, and the children, of course, are surprised at that. And they are surprised to find out that the salary was different for women than it was for men. Women earned less than men. because it was thought women were not married, they did not have to support a family, whereas men might be married and they did have a family, so to support, perhaps. So the records show us that in 1870, a woman might be earning $8 to $10 per week, and a man might be earning $12.50. Now, this is from the Auburn School Report of those times. The teacher's salary was paid by the families, and part of your salary was the fact that you could board with your families. And I asked the children, how would you like that, have your teacher living with you? Just give them pause. I said she would learn everything about you, the good and the bad. I wanted to share with you a description of what a teacher was expected to do. And after this strike in Chicago, I thought, I wonder if these teachers, for $10 a week, do they ever think about doing that? You know? Teachers, this is from the Auburn School Report. Teachers shall endeavor, 1882. Teachers shall endeavor to inspire their pupils with a love of learning and truth, and train them in the habits of prompt and faithful obedience. Discipline shall be of a parental character. Politeness and good behavior inculcated and carefully exacted, and corporal punishment resorted to only when other means fail. Teachers shall exercise a general care over their pupils during school hours, out of doors as well as within, and during recess shall, as far as possible, have a care over them in the schoolyard. Further, teachers shall exercise a careful oversight of the buildings occupied by them, including yards and fences, attend to the warming and ventilation of their schoolrooms, and see that they are kept properly clean. Also, guard the furniture and books from injury, and at the close of each day, personally see that the door, windows, and gates are properly fastened. All this for $10 a week. Now, as far as the subject matter is concerned, in the beginning years, it was mostly what teachers felt was important, or what families felt was important. It wasn't until the later part of the 1800s that there became a Department of Education in the state of Maine that began to say this is what needed to be taught. So, but of course the 3 R's, very important. And the 4th R might as well have been religion, because every day was begun with the Bible reading and the Lord's Prayer. Now when the children come to the schoolhouse, I read the 100th Psalm, which children were expected to memorize, and I have a little prayer. I do not use the Lord's Prayer, but I do say a prayer. And basically it's asking that we will be diligent and that the words of our mouths will be acceptable to God. Morality was, and character